Read aloud of the Odyssey, chapter 2. Oh, that's not what I wanted. All right, here we go. Odysseus was dreaming. It was a nightmare that he knew very well. It was back in the wooden horse with his comrades, Menelaus, Diomedes, and the rest of them. They were sick with fear, dry-mouthed, shivering, and drenched in sweat, just as they had been in reality when the Trojans dragged the great horse across the plain from the Greek camp to their lovely city. Only in the nightmare, instead of dragging the horse into Troy as the Greeks had intended, the Trojans hauled it up onto the cliffs and pushed it over the edge. Then it was falling, it seemed forever, down onto the rocks below. Odysseus cried out in terror. He awoke suddenly in a cold sweat. For a moment, he thought another nightmare had begun. Everywhere he looked, he saw eyes staring at him, and he froze like an animal, startled in its lair. As his own eyes adjusted to the dim light, he was amazed to see a group of young women peering into his shelter. Before he could move, they turned and ran off through the trees, all except for one. Although she was trembling, the tallest of the girls stood her ground and stared back at Odysseus with proud, unblinking eyes. The girl watched Odysseus crawl out of his shelter and stand before her like some wild amphibian creature. He was naked, his unkempt hair and beard bedraggled and encrusted, like his skin with salt, seaweed, and dead leaves. The girl was radiantly beautiful. The two of them stared at one another in amazement before Odysseus spoke. "Are you a vision or are you real? You must be a princess or even a goddess. You remind me of Artemis the huntress, daughter of the mighty Zeus. Are those young women who ran away the nymphs who keep you company?" The girl smiled at this idea as Odysseus continued. "Whoever you are, I need your help. You see before you an unlucky wanderer, desperate to return to his family and home. Let me tell you how I arrived here, naked and alone, a stranger in a strange land." Odysseus then recounted the story of his ordeal at sea. As she listened, the girl was unable to take her eyes off of the deep bruises that covered his body. It was a miracle that he had survived. "Poor unlucky man, how you have suffered! But now your luck has changed, for here you will find all the help you need. I am Nausicaa, this land is Phaeacia, and my father Alcinous is the king. Come," she said, stretching out a lovely hand. "We must find you some clothes and something to eat. Then I'll take you to my father's palace." After taking him gently by the hand, Nausicaa led Odysseus out of the woods. The young women were waiting nervously at the edge of the coppice. At the sight of Odysseus, they moved back again. "What a sorry group you are," Nausicaa laughed, tossing back her mane of black hair. "Anyone would think you'd never seen a man before." Once they were sure that Odysseus was indeed a man and not some savage beast or spirit of the woods, the young women began laughing at themselves too. Nausicaa told one of them to fetch some clothes from the laundry wagon that stood by the stream, while she herself prepared a meal. The girls' half-eaten picnic lay in the shade of the ancient olive tree, exactly as they had left it when they heard the strange cry from the coppice. Meanwhile, Odysseus plunged into the clear stream and washed the brine and grime off his skin and hair. When he was clean, he dried himself in the sun and rubbed olive oil into his chapped, bruised skin. Yeah, they used to do that. Then he wrapped himself in a white and purple tunic that Arete, Nausicaa's mother, had woven. The girls were astonished to see the terrifying savage transformed into the godlike creature who now sat beneath the olive tree by the water. They watched, fascinated, as he ate and drank slowly and delicately in spite of his ravenous hunger. "This man is close to the gods," thought Nausicaa. "With a man like this, I would gladly share my life." Odysseus sensed that he was being watched and looked up to see the young princess staring at him. She blushed at the thought that he might be reading her mind, and he quickly looked away, not wanting to embarrass her. By the time he had finished eating, the young women had rounded up their mules and harnessed them to the wagon. Nausicaa took the reins. "Noble stranger," she called to Odysseus, "it's time to go now. Walk along with us and I'll take you to my father's palace." The girls laughed and sang as they climbed up through the meadows toward the town. They often glanced at the stranger in their midst. They could not help it, but Odysseus did not notice. He was too busy wondering what lay in store for him at the palace, and as he walked along, he sent up a silent prayer to his guardian goddess Athene, or Athena, daughter of the mighty Zeus. They were soon at the city walls and passed through the gates. It was a beautiful town of whitewashed houses decked with pots of geraniums, vines, climbing roses, and sweet-smelling rosemary. In the center lay the harbor, where rows of magnificent ships were moored. Alongside the harbor was the assembly place, and above this stood the palace. They entered a courtyard studded with fabulous mosaics and arrayed with statues and ornamental pools and fountains. On either side of the courtyard, there were sumptuous gardens full of herbs, fruits, and flowers, dominated by great cedars of Lebanon. It was a glorious sight. Odysseus looked around with admiration as he followed the princess to the golden doors of the palace itself. Now, Nausicaa and Odysseus continued on alone. They climbed the steps between fierce-faced gold and silver watchdogs that reminded Odysseus of the three-headed Cerberus, or Cerberus, the wicked dog that guards the gates of Hades. At the top of the steps, he took a deep breath and then followed Nausicaa across the bronze threshold into the great hall.